Hello, I'm Dan Limbach from Pharma Voice, and I'd like to welcome you to today's event entitled Improving Trial Outcomes, How Organizations Can Leverage eClinical Integration for Reducing Costs and Gaining Efficiencies, brought to you by Pharma Voice and sponsored by our good friends at Eris Global. We have a very nice crowd today. Thank you for investing the time to attend. We'll certainly do our very best to make it worth your while. If you are interested in a copy of the slides from this presentation or have other questions related to the material, please send an email to info@erisglobal.com and put Integration Webinar in the subject line. Your request will be answered in the next couple days. We have a great panel to help us understand the issues and navigate through the challenges presented in today's clinical environment. Let's learn who our thought leaders are. Dr. Silva Collins is Vice President of Total Clinical Solutions at Eris Global and leads the company's efforts in providing innovative eClinical solutions to life science organizations. She is a recognized leading authority in management of biostatistics, data management, and clinical systems development, and has over 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, including the preparation of more than 24 NDAs and spearheading the successful deployment of EDC with great success. Jeffrey Yablon is Eris Global's Vice President of Sales, and he is also an instructor and course director at the Center for Biotechnology at Stony Brook University. Jeff has held senior executive management positions at CTO, CRO, and life science organizations, specifically in the area of business development and operations. He has also served as a consultant to the life sciences industry, advising financial organizations on CRO and life science acquisitions. Dr. Collins is going to start things off today with an educational presentation followed by a Q&A session. Then Jeffrey is going to show us some integration solutions followed by a second Q&A session to close out the event. So let's get started. Dr. Collins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you all for joining the webcast today. Before I start my presentation, we're going to have two polling questions for you to learn from you about your pain points on integration, and would like to handle the first one before my presentation, and we'll do the second question in about 10 or 15 minutes into my presentation. Here's the first question. We would like to learn from you whether your organization is moving towards an integrated eClinical platform in the next 1 to 3 years. So please check the answer that's appropriate for your organization, whether you're already in the process or if you're planning to move into eClinical in the next 12 to 36 months. And at the end of your responses, we will summarize and share the summary responses with you.
So for those of you in the live audience to participate in the poll, please select the answer that best represents your views or experiences, and in this poll you can only select one answer. So we're going to give you a moment to give us your responses. And while we're waiting, Dr. Collins, are you seeing a lot of companies moving to an integrated eClinical platform? And if so, why is this happening now?
I think many companies have been trying to move towards integrated environment for some years now, and we all recognize that there are a lot of challenges, and I think integration has many benefits in making clinical development more efficient. And in fact, today in my presentation, I will discuss some of those challenges and present some solutions.
Okay, very good. Now let's move on to the results. Okay, well, it looks like we have a couple of answers here that are leading the pack. Already in the process, 37% of our audience, and not sure 29%. Dr. Collins, what do you make of these results?
Well, I think it's encouraging that 37% are already in the process, and so basically 2/3 of the organizations are planning or already in the process. That's a good sign.
Very good. Dr. Collins, you may continue your presentation.
Thank you, Dan. So as you know, clinical trials produce large quantities of data which must be processed. They must be checked for accuracy. We have to analyze the results statistically, report to authorities, and ultimately archive all the data. Each of these steps is expensive and time-consuming, and sponsors spend hundreds of millions of dollars for each new drug just to collect and process data. Computer applications, computer information technology routinely provides assistance in most of the steps involved. In the majority of cases, the computer applications used in one area of clinical development do not necessarily mesh or do not mesh easily with applications used in other areas. For example, an EDC system collects data on patients, patient visits, but this information is rarely used automatically to trigger investigator payments or to resupply of trial medications. Likewise, EDC collects all the information on adverse events, including SAEs. But other programs are used to report SAEs to responsible authorities, and often requiring redundant data entry of SAE information. Not only this process and re-entry of data is costly and time-consuming, it sometimes results in different versions of the same event that must then be reconciled. There are a lot of discrepancies because of this redundant process. Today's e-clinical environment is a patchwork of point solutions. And integrating these programs into one integrated environment, coherent whole, could lead to major improvements in speed, in cost, and in quality. Nonetheless, several attempts by Big Pharma to create fully integrated systems have failed. And this presentation analyzes these developments and proposes solutions. In a better environment, information captured by one program is electronically and automatically relayed to another program for further use. In an ideal environment, however, there's only one system of programs, each accessing a single unified database. So there are two approaches to improvement in clinical systems, and they fall in two categories, either evolving existing systems towards a unified whole by building interfaces across the system, or creating an entire suite from scratch. Most sponsors have some version of the better environment. That is, each sponsor has a suite of programs, some of which communicate with some others through interfaces built specifically to allow program-to-program communication. Since there could be dozens of component programs, many interfaces are needed. A sponsor starting from scratch could create a fully integrated environment in which all pertinent data reside in a common database and all relevant programs add information as needed or read information as needed. And they produce further output and place the output in the same data repository. In this ideal environment, a highly maintainable, coherent system to which pieces can be added or removed as needed in a centrally organized manner. This replaces dozens of standalone programs, each with its own standards for data formats and user interface. Visually, this can be represented as a hub-and-spoke model, as you can see in this picture in the slide. Interfaces in this model are largely unnecessary, since all components use the same data format standards. Of course, sponsors do not get to start from scratch. The suite of programs currently used by the industry comprises millions of lines of computer code developed over decades. Building the ideal environment would be an enormous undertaking, fraught with all the usual problems of building large information technology systems, and of course some other problems added uniquely by the pharma industry. We're going to stop for just 1 minute and take the second polling question at this time. And the question here is, looking at your organization and considering the pain points in your efforts to try to get integrated environment, which of the following integration points are most important to you? And here you can check more than one system depending on which systems you believe are most important to integrate.
Yes, so those of you in the audience, we'll give you a moment again to select the answers, and as Dr. Collins mentioned, you can select as many answers as you wish on this one. So, Dr. Collins, if a company is experiencing only one pain point, does it justify moving to an integrated system, or does it make more sense that the company is feeling pain in multiple areas?
Well, I think it depends on the pain point. I mean, again, and it depends on the goal of the organization. If you're trying to make, let's say, clinical operations more efficient, specifically if you're trying to make CRAs more efficient, it would make sense to integrate EDC with CTMS. On the other hand, if you're trying to streamline supply management and randomization, dynamic randomization, it makes sense to integrate EDC with IDRS. Really depends on the company's goals.
Okay, thank you for that. I think our audience has had enough time. Let's see what the results are. And it looks like EDC has a fair lead over CTMS and clinical safety system, but they're all getting some votes here, so we're seeing a lot of pain out there. What do you think of that, Dr. Collins?
I think it's the right direction as far as I would have guessed. My estimate would have been EDC and CTMS and EDC and safety, or all these three systems integrated as a top priority. So
it looks like our audience is definitely in lockstep with what you've been seeing in the industry.
I think so, yes.
Okay, you may continue your presentation.
So I'd like to spend a few minutes now talking about the challenges in building the ideal environment. The central problem in constructing the ideal environment is the preparation of detailed specifications. Specifications rely on several factors, such as requirements of regulatory authorities, capabilities of the technology, the available technology, the resources needed to do the job, the knowledgeable resources, and management perceptions of the business aspects of the clinical development plan, and finally, profit objectives. Each of these deserves some analysis, so I'm going to go into some detail in discussing each of these challenges. For example, the requirements of regulatory authorities change, and in this slide you see the FDA's 21 CFR Part 11 recommendations for software quality. You can see that the 1997 version of these recommendations is labeled as the final rule, except for all the annual revisions. Basically, recommendations change over time. The specifications must be tied to available means of developing these specifications into a working product. Software projects take time, and as specifications become larger as they expand, the time to develop them into a product not only increases, but it increases disproportionately. A specification written today for the IT technology, let's say available in, say, 1990, would reflect the computers of that era. Since 1990, of course, there have been many advances in IT technology. The internet, cell phones, laptops, flash memory, and wireless broadband, to name a few. A product specified even 5 years ago could not have anticipated iPhones or iPads or 4G. A product specified today will be deficient in all the technological leaps forward that occur in the span of a project's duration. Quite clearly, a specification which takes years to develop into a finished product will be obsolete long before it is completed. The scope of the work needed to do the job must not be ignored. A line of computer code can cost anywhere from about $20 to $500, depending on the type of application and on the size of the project. Taking an estimate of, let's say, $100 per line and a further estimate of 1 million lines of code, surely this is at the lowest end of the estimate. The cost of implementing the ideal environment from scratch starts at $100 million. In labor markets with lower costs, there's potential for reducing the cost. Nonetheless, by this estimate, 500 programmers could get the job done in about 2 years, once the specifications are written and then followed by a year or more of debugging. This is the good news. Some single large sponsors might be willing, and indeed some have been willing, to incur an expenditure of this size in order to achieve a modern, fully integrated eClinical suite of software. If only it were this easy, finding 500 properly trained, available programmers and about 24 experienced, effective managers cannot be achieved overnight. Years are needed just to assemble the staff. Large projects require long-term planning, turnover, specification change, technological advances, and senior management's vision and patience will all change the trajectory of project completion. A large, long, expensive project must have a business objective. But while the cost of the project is clear, is a certainty, the outcome is not. More simply stated, senior management will ask which aspects of the business will improve if the project is completed successfully. How will improvement be measured? Will operations become less costly? Will drug approvals come faster? Whatever the answers to these questions, there will always be one additional question: when? When will the project be completed? I'm going to the previous slide here. Okay. Another important consideration is who writes the specifications? Who has the vision to see how things should be done? The goal, after all, is to become more efficient. And greater efficiency means fewer people or even no people needed to complete a task. Will the writers of the specifications be the same people whose livelihoods will be adversely affected? At the outset, specifications need to be written by individuals who can peer into the future and whose wealth is not threatened by the outcome. If we ask the practitioners of current methods for specifications, we can expect two things. First, automation of existing manual processes, and second, nothing that makes that person's job unnecessary. Henry Ford designed the Model T himself. He is famously quoted as saying that if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have asked for a faster horse. In New York City a century ago, one of the greatest obstacles to the construction of city subways was opposition by the drivers of the horse-drawn carriages. Even if a project could be completed successfully, on time, and compliant with specifications, it still costs money that could be used for other things. If those other things bring a higher return on investment, it is difficult to justify the expenditure. If the likelihood of successful, timely completion is uncertain, the risk premium of the project grows large. That is, the estimated return on investment in the eClinical suite must be much larger than that of the alternatives in order to commit to such a large expense. In some situations, there is still the perception that eClinical trials are more expensive than paper-based trials. In this situation, the benefits in speed and quality must be great enough to overcome concerns about cost. The technological obstacles are large enough to mask the really big problem. Good clinical programs make possible very substantial improvements in clinical development. For example, fully implemented EDC systems have been widely reported to reduce data queries by over 90%. And this leads to an obvious question or obvious consequence. If there are 90% fewer queries to resolve, far less staff will be needed to resolve them. It's not the objective to make anyone's job easier, rather to make many jobs unnecessary. Our objective is to become more efficient. The capabilities that already exist in the hodgepodge of e-clinical programs are not fully exploited today. And recasting them into a coherent, fully integrated, easy-to-maintain system will not change this. New technologies require new SOPs, workflows, and management structures to take full advantage of the capabilities of the technology. Applying new technology to old methods will not automatically cause workflows to change. A computer program cannot make a company do what its management cannot make it do. Fully exploited and expressed in appropriate SOPs, an EDC system radically reduces time needed and staff needed to lock clinical databases. This widely published graph from a major sponsor shows database locks using paper in red and using EDC in yellow. And you can see here, as the slide shows, the time to lock an EDC database is 1 week, compared to 13 weeks using paper. And not shown here in this graph is the very substantial reduction in staff needed to complete the work. Even creating a system is still evolutionary because requirements change. And worse, there will always be renegades who look for quick fixes to immediate problems. Large projects take disproportionately longer than smaller projects. Longer time means more specification changes, more turnover, and more technological advances that must be incorporated. As a result, the clean, appealing image of the nice picture of the hub and spoke model will become tarnished as shortcuts are taken to achieve intermediate goals. Before the project is completed, the clean image of the hub and spoke model will begin to look a lot like the old system of disjointed programs with incomplete interfaces. Even such a result is not the worst possible outcome. Most large IT projects fail. As shown in this slide, the bigger they are, the more likely they are to fail. There's a substantial body of historical examples of attempts to replace obsolete suites of software with scratch-built, modern, maintainable versions. Let me share a couple of examples with you. The U.S. FDA spent tens of millions of dollars building an SAE registry rather than buy an off-the-shelf program that accomplished nearly the same objectives. After years of delay, the project has produced not a better SAE reporting system, but rather frustration that SAE reporting is still not what it should be. In another example, the FBI, following 9/11, began building a virtual case file program, VCF program, where field agents would have access to case files anywhere in the world. This was a national security priority and required the FBI director to report progress regularly to a congressional committee. The project was on time and achieving its objectives until it was abandoned in complete failure. A follow-up project, itself costing millions, to determine if anything were salvageable from the BCF project, concluded that it was a total loss. The FBI recently announced that it was suspending work on its second attempt at BCF, but this time having spent nearly twice as much. The UK EHR project provides yet another example, so striking that only the truly utopian will ignore. After a decade of effort and about 11 billion British pounds, the UK announced just 5 days ago, last week, they announced that the world's largest IT project has been cancelled. After a recent review, the UK concluded that its original design strategy, that is a universal, fully integrated top-down system, was fundamentally flawed. In its place, the UK National Health Services will use a suite of systems driven by the core assumption of connect all, rather than the failed concept of replace all. When success remains out of reach, three major reasons invariably arise. First, it's just too hard. Major players with generous budgets, as well as experience in large projects, find the effort simply too difficult for successful completion. Second, it becomes obsolete before it is finished. Very large projects simply last too long and are overtaken by the rapid pace of technological change. If the rate of progress toward completion is slower than the rate at which requirements change, no endpoint will ever be reached. And third, the software isn't used in the manner intended. Features that seemed essential at the beginning of the project may have been superseded by new requirements or are no longer regarded as being important. The management in place at the beginning of a long project will have been replaced by turnover and retirement at the end. The management vision and discipline that started the project might be very different years later. E-clinical technologies must be applied to an ongoing business. This is analogous to changing the engines of a propeller plane to jets while the plane is flying. Creating the system from scratch is out of the question. That leaves evolutionary improvements to existing suite of programs. We're stuck with evolution, that is, building and maintaining interfaces. Said another way, creation, because it takes so long, is evolutionary. The cornerstone of real improvement is reliance on standards. Standards make interfaces easier. Standards need not be profound, and simple standards have a large effect on the effort needed. A developer need not standardize everything himself. An enormous effort has been already spent by CDIS, for example, to provide standards for clinical data. If no such outside agency provides a needed standard, simply create new ones. It will be easier later to comply with an external standard if only one internal standard must be changed. A fully integrated system has obvious advantages. A modern, complete, well-designed suite would enjoy tremendous advantages in maintainability and acceptability. The effort to produce such a system would be heroic. History, however, counsels against this attempt. The cost would be surely enormous, but the low likelihood of successful completion invites only the naively ambitious. As unappealing as it may seem to some, the surest way forward is to provide useful interfaces between existing programs. This approach integrates their capabilities and replaces obsolete pieces with newer ones where available and where needed. Standardize at every opportunity. The last step in this evolution is the key to real productivity gains. The standards and the functionality included in eClinical software must be reflected in organizational structure and workflow SOPs. Drug development costs can be significantly reduced by eliminating the overlap and redundant processes across different departments. Focus on smart integration across core systems such as EDC, IVRS, CTMS, and safety. And I think the responses to the second question, polling question, show that these are the areas most sponsors are focusing on. We're enabling data to be entered only once and used whenever needed. A number of vendors provide suites of applications that enable effective integration of various aspects of clinical development. Sponsors can make substantial progress into their eClinical plans by deploying even one part of an eClinical suite and expanding into related areas at the pace of their choosing. Tremendous leaps forward are within the grasp of sponsors who successfully exploit available eClinical technologies. The strategy is to be tactical. Although a bold sponsor might wish to deploy an entire suite at once, that is creation, a series of tactical strikes, that is evolution, will place a sponsor in the forefront of eClinical deployment. Learn from the UK EHR project. Don't replace all, but rather connect all. Thank you for your attention. And I'll be happy to take some questions now.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Collins. Throughout the first presentation segment of the webinar, we've all heard and seen a lot of great information from Dr. Collins about eClinical integration. This landscape is constantly changing, and this information will certainly help us stay on top of the key issues. We've only scratched the surface on this complex topic, so please make sure you send in your questions if you want to go into greater depth on the issues discussed today. It is now time for our first Q&A session, which is always a popular segment in our web seminars. We already have several outstanding questions sent in from the attendees. Please take a moment now to submit your questions. Type your questions into the Ask a Question text area in the bottom corner of your screen, then click the Submit button. Please note that due to time constraints today, we may not be able to respond to all questions submitted. But I'd like to reiterate that all registered participants will receive an email within a week or so with access to an archive of this web event. All right, let's go to our questions. Well, we have a great one to start out here. Dr. Collins, can you please define what is meant by an integrated eClinical platform specific to safety data collection and ECRF data, or including lab randomization, IVRS, etc.?
Well, I'll start with the integration of ECRFs and safety. As you know, in an EDC study, in a clinical trial, massive, large amounts of data are collected about patient visits, efficacy, safety variables. So all safety variables are already collected in an EDC system. So investigators enter that data into the EDC system. At the same time, traditionally, and most sponsors are still using this traditional method where investigators are also expected to fill out forms and fax it to the sponsor with serious AEs. The sponsor then takes this data and yet enters the SAE data into yet another system, the SAE system. So integrated environment for EDC and safety would use the EDC system and build an interface between your EDC system and your safety system so the data doesn't need to be entered twice. If you have an EDC, if you're using EDC and if you're using a safety system. Of course, in terms of randomization, you can integrate your EDC system with IVRS, and you can do randomization and supply management just in time, as needed supply management, where the IVRS system will notify the investigator as to how much medication is required. There's forecasting involved, so it's a very useful and efficient integration environment. So you can integrate just pieces and just components of your eClinical environment. CTMS is another very important environment where tremendous amount of time is spent by CRAs, for example, entering patient status, performance, patient enrollment rate manually into a CTMS system. Why do that? You can integrate EDC with your CTMS system, so an interface is built where all that information is in the EDC system, is pushed into your CTMS, eliminating redundant data entry, and also timely and higher quality data into your either CTMS or your safety system.
Very good. Thank you. And I just want to remind everybody, in a few minutes after this Q&A session, Jeffrey's going to explain and demonstrate some actual solutions, or talk about some solutions to this very issue. So here's our next question, Dr. Collins. What is your view or experience on using eClinical and paper together?
Well, my question is, why would you want to do that? I have done a lot of EDC studies in my career in the pharma industry. I would say over 1,000 EDC studies. And the only reason people have come to me and said, why can't we do also paper when needed? And there was no reason to use paper once you start doing your EDC studies. I think there was only one country where they refused to transfer data electronically, where they had to enter it on paper. I don't see any justification. I don't recommend doing EDC and paper. I think paper is old, primitive, get rid of it.
Very good. Okay, our next question. Can I pick my preferred data collection systems and somehow integrate them with like you, or do we have to use specific systems in order to integrate them into the hub?
Can you repeat that question, Dan?
Yeah. Can I pick my preferred data collection systems and somehow integrate them like you do, or do we have to use specific systems in order to integrate them into the hub?
No, you can interface your system with any other system. If you have your own EDC system, if you have your own safety system, an interface can be built between those two, customized to your system. However, there are vendors who have already probably integrated or interface type systems, and if you're not able to use the vendor system, then just build an interface of your own two systems.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you. You talked about the need to change workflows and management structures. As clinical safety and CTMS departments each report to different areas of the organization, what recommendations do you have for how to get these two areas to work together?
Well, that's a great question, and I'd like to quote Churchill. Churchill learned early in his career that not to attempt to implement strategies from a subordinate position. Integrating business operations is a difficult task. It's actually more difficult to integrate business operations than to integrate your software. So if your goal is to integrate business operations, what you really need is the very top senior management support to make this operational integration possible. You cannot do that from a subordinate position. I think the senior management of the company will have to appreciate the efficiencies of this integration, and they have to support it. It has to be a mandate from the top to integrate these processes.
Excellent. Here's another good question. What do you feel is the most significant barrier in connecting components of eClinical?
I think the most significant barrier is changing requirements, specifications. Keep it simple and really look at the low-hanging fruits. Try to keep simple integration integrate the most important systems, such as, for example, EDC and CTMS, and use the key variables that are being redundant in terms of duplicative data entry. Don't try to integrate or pass every piece of information from EDC into CTMS. That's not necessary. Just ask the question, what does a CRA need in a CTMS system, and just really focused integration, useful integration, and keep it simple and control the scope of your integration. As you keep changing your requirements, the integration process just becomes more complex.
Very good. And our next question, and this might be the last one for this section, and then we'll turn it over to Jeffrey. Regarding EDC, are tailor-made EDC applications created by vendors like Oracle and others preferable over in-house designed EDCs, such as an EDC creation software, which would be customizable by the sponsor for certain types of studies in order to have fast creation and implementation?
I think this also depends on the sponsor and on your budget, the time. If you want off-the-shelf systems, EDC systems, they exist today. 10 years ago, I couldn't have chosen a system. In my own experience, we have built twice our own internal EDC system because the market did not have a mature EDC system. Today, the systems are available. They're out there. However, if you have any specific customization needed, and it's expensive to build your own system internally, especially for a small company. My suggestion is look what's available already and don't reinvent the wheel. And, of course, it's a cost-benefit analysis, too. It depends on your budget and your goals.
Very good. Well, I think that's all the time we have for the first Q&A session. So let's move on to Jeffrey Yablon, who is going to show us some solutions related to eClinical integrations, followed by our second Q&A session. Jeff, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Once again, I'm Jeffrey Yablon. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Aeris Global, and I'm very pleased to be joining you today. I'm briefly going to talk about the Aeris Global position in this marketplace and how we see it. If you look at this first slide that talks about our total clinical solution being simpler, smarter, and faster, at the end of the day, we all recognize our efforts in clinical development are about creating a clean, combinable data set that can be submitted to a regulatory agency for adjudication relative to how well a product works. Is it safe? Is it efficacious? And in a post-marketing environment, how does it compare to other products, and does it continue to be safe and efficacious? Our view is to look at products that increase operating efficiency, reduce costs, and maintain or enhance clinical quality. We also have a view of integrating our products not only into our own proprietary suite of products, but working with vendor partners like Medidata, for example, and using their EDC system as well in terms of integration. We have other partners in the area of IVRS and ePro that we work with as well. So the idea is to provide an eClinical solution defined as the ability to take disparate data elements, bring it into one hub, one comprehensive data set, and pull all that information together so it is clean and combinable in a manner that can be analyzed, can be reviewed, and can also be submitted for regulatory review. As we look at the total integration platform that we have at Aeris Global, we have a variety of products. The hub of what we're doing right now in EDC is our AG Capture product. And we also have a product called AG Exchange IRT, which is a clinical safety gateway, which enables users to review cases prior to being entered into the hub drug safety system. This facilitates better review, triage, and eliminates redundancy and added work. We also have a product called the AG Exchange SIR, which is nothing more than a portal. But that portal reduces costs significantly by allowing the distribution of investigative reports in a timely and cost-efficient manner. And at the hub of everything that we do is Aeris G. Our Aeris G product is a going on 20-plus years of utilization, the largest utilized drug safety platform for management of adverse events. And that then is tied into our AG Clinical product, which is a CTMS product that will be launching later this year. The other thing I might mention is that we continue to look at partnerships. Medidata, as I mentioned earlier, is one of our key partners in the space, and we are looking and will be announcing others in the future. Our effort is to be relatively agnostic. Our effort is to solve problems. Our effort is to enable single data entry that will populate latitudinally and longitudinally through the system so we can get to the solutions and the answers and the analysis required with less rework, less data entry, and a greater efficiency with higher clinical quality. As we look at what we do in terms of the benefits and the business value, in terms of the benefits, as I'm sure you're all aware, seamless integration between core clinical systems, of course, is the goal. Improving quality, increasing efficiency, and delivering faster data locks, and those data locks leading to faster submissions. As we know, the Tufts Center for Pharmaceutical Research has come out and said over the years that for every day a regulatory submission is delayed, and for every day that submission is delayed in terms of approval, depending upon the total available market of a particular product, will cost that sponsor from $1 to $8 million per day. So this is a high cost. This is a high stakes issue, and we're trying to work with our sponsors to solve that problem by becoming faster, better, and less costly in the process. In terms of the business value, of course, the delivery of high-quality data and performance metrics, real-time updates from EDC drives improved trial performance, integrating that into a safety system that allows things to be populated seamlessly to get better visualization on AEs and SAEs is, of course, beneficial, and then leveraging Aris Global's 20 years of experience in the drug safety, regulatory, clinical, and health information markets, we believe are very beneficial to our clients and to the marketplace as well. The cornerstone, I guess the thing that rounds out our total clinical services beyond just the software choices that we provide to our customers, are the services associated with our total clinical milieu of products. And that includes product management. It includes study design and build. It has 24/7 help desk support and trial data extracts that can be exported to our sponsors for analysis. And we have a robust hosting system that would obviate the need for infrastructure management on the part of our clients. So all in all, Aris Global has a view to the future. We have a system, a process, and a goal to be a continued leader in e-clinical solutions that solves the fundamental problems of drug development and delivery. And that concludes my brief presentation and commentary, subject to any questions that any of you in the audience may have. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So it's time for our second Q&A session, and we do have several great questions. So the first one is, do you see progress with integration within the products being offered by clinical trial software vendors, and are there any emerging leaders in your opinion?
Well, yes. I mean, there is definitely an eye toward integration by all of the major vendors out there. We recognize that our products have to work well with other products, that they have to be, to use a word, integratable into other systems, into other processes. They have to solve problems. In terms of emerging leaders, I would not take this opportunity to opine on any specific companies that have products, but ourselves, working with Medidata, for example, that's working effectively in terms of their safety hub. We're also looking at other partners in the area of IVRS, imaging, laboratory information systems, and ePro to round out our offering, and there are clear market leaders in each one of those verticals.
Excellent. And I just want to tell people in the audience, in a few minutes, we're also going to be telling them how they can acquire a white paper that covers a lot of topics that are being discussed today. So stick around for a few more minutes. All right, Jeffrey, you briefly mentioned that the TCS solutions are available on a hosted platform. Is that the only way you offer these solutions?
No, not necessarily. We can also offer it on an enterprise basis. The EDC is fundamentally a study-by-study hosted solution, but there can be tech transfer and other methodologies that we can use. Our CTMS product is available both hosted and enterprise-based, as is ARIS-G. We're trying to meet the needs of customers, both large and small, in terms of their infrastructure investment and their need to better manage systems. So we offer both a hosted and an enterprise install.
Excellent. Here's our next question. Primarily known for your ARIS-G safety system, what value does ARIS Global bring to a crowded eClinical marketplace?
It's an excellent question, and we do recognize that the EDC space is crowded, and there are two formidable cornerstone competitors with as many as 75 additional players in the EDC space. But what we think differentiates ARIS Global from the competition is the ability to integrate those informatics with drug safety, CTMS, and regulatory systems. The benefit of entering data once and have it populate the system latitudinally is of great benefit, and that's the feedback that we've gotten from our customers. Do we see ourselves being an EDC company going forward? No, we see ourselves being a solutions-based company that's looking for best-in-breed solutions to meet the needs of our pharmaceutical sponsors in drug development and drug safety.
Very good. Here's our next question. Jeffrey, it says, I'm confused. Isn't your partnership with Medidata competing against your own AG Capture product?
No, not at all. We're really working in a complementary manner. Our AG Capture product has some very specific benefits to a certain subsegment of the available marketplace out there. But working with a world-class organization like Medidata, who has a huge installed base, who does not have a direct position in drug safety, we see that being complementary and accretive to our overall efforts. So, no, not at all is the answer.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Collins, we've got a couple more questions for you in here. Would you like to hear one?
Sure.
Okay. What is the best way of redesigning the processes?
Well, the best way, I don't think there is a best way, but we need to really sit down as a team with the various stakeholders in a company, ask ourselves, what can we do better? Where can we gain efficiencies? Do we need to enter data twice or three times for the same information that's already collected in one system and not, what are our objectives to become more efficient? So really there has to be a team who can see, has the vision and has the goal to make things better, faster, better, and more economical for the sponsor. I would start with the core processes in a clinical development organization, clinical operations, data management, and monitoring. There's so much synergy, so many synergies in those two organizations. And really, one can sit down and in a couple of hours you can just look at those processes and say, oh my goodness, we can do this so much faster, so much better, and more efficiently. So it takes some effort, and it takes the willingness and the commitment to change. And you definitely need, as I said earlier, you definitely need the support of the higher senior management. Because there's also that turf issue, and, safety department likes to keep things in safety. Data management likes to do their own way, and there has to be, cooperation to make changes.
Very good. Well, let's take one more question for each of the speakers. And just as a reminder, if we don't get to your question during the live event, the presenters will receive all questions submitted live online or via email. So, Jeffrey, back to you. Does ARIS have experience working with both sponsors and CROs to manage trials?
Yes, we most certainly do, and we work collaboratively with both. And we're also cognizant of the specific needs of both parties. where CROs work with a multitude of clients, and we have to have systems that allow them to compartmentalize that information so it's kept safe, secure, and compliant with the regulatory environment. We're capable of doing that, and also we work with individual sponsors as well.
Okay, and Dr. Collins, one more for you. What's your opinion on pharma success of going to EPM systems for plans, budgets, and resources?
I think a pharma company can definitely benefit from an effective, useful budgeting system, planning system. And whether they develop that from scratch is really the question. I think there are vendors who may already have packages that do that for you. So I think it would be worthwhile to check out and check some companies who provide that. But I think that's a big, big pain point in a pharma organization, budgeting, contracting, planning, and definitely tremendous advantages in having an automated system that works.
Thank you. Since we still have a couple minutes till the top of the hour, I'm going to try and sneak in a couple more questions if we can. Jeffrey, typical lead times to implement has historically been longer with e-solutions. Has this time shortened?
That's almost a trick question, and it's difficult to answer in a broad brush. It depends upon what systems are already pre-installed and what the baseline is and what you're looking to integrate and what you're defining as the e-solution. And a simple integration of a drug safety system and an EDC system would be far easier than a complex integration that will require the integration of, let's say, IVRS imaging, CTMS, and EDC simultaneously. However, I will say that all of us in the industry have become more facile in terms of knowing how to do these integrations and our willingness and our ability to do these integrations. So I would most certainly say the timelines have been compressed but by what factor, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Excellent. And our final question for the event before we tell you how to get the white paper. No mention was made of CDMS. Jeffrey, do you assume that all data management work can be completed within the EDC application?
No. I do not believe that to be true at all at this point. It's not a one-stop shop where it fits all. That CDMS still will continue to play a key role in this as companies like Medidata and others are looking at more comprehensive solutions that roll and integrate all of those together. Down the road, I would see that transpiring, but right now, the short answer would be no.
Very good. Well, that's all the time we have for Q&A. Once again, I encourage you to contact our presenters. They are truly interested in hearing from you about this topic. If you still want to submit a question to our speakers, or if you want to request a copy of today's slides, please email info@arisglobal.com and put Integration Webinar in the subject line. I hope you all enjoyed this event and have taken away some new insights. If any of your colleagues missed this presentation, once again, it will be available as an archive within about a week, and you'll be notified via email. Now I'd like to give Dr. Collins the opportunity for a closing comment. Dr. Collins?
Well, I just really want to thank everyone for joining this webcast, and I personally am very passionate about eClinical and efficiencies and integration. However, just remember, don't replace all, connect all is really the lesson we can all learn and apply in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to once again thank all of our friends from Aris Global. Our presenters especially did an outstanding job. At Pharma Voice, we are always looking for better ways to bring you quality events that address your key issues. We also encourage you to look for future web seminars by visiting www.pharmavoice.com. We want to thank you for investing your time in our web event. If you have any questions resulting from today's webcast, please contact us at info@arisglobal.com with the subject line Integration webinar. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. The event is now over.